Dig this here, y'all. This is your girl, Angela T. Jones, and I am back from a long Memorial Day weekend. And when I tell you, honey, it has been very interesting. It's been hot, but we had 8 months of winter, y'all. This global warming is real, so let's not complain about 80, low 90s in May, because we've been waiting quite a long time for this to occur. But today, let's talk about white privilege for a second. Yes, I said white privilege. It is real. It exists. People benefit from it on a regular and recurring basis. It has its own little, how should I best put it, double standards within itself, but it's there. And it does not benefit Black or brown people in any way, shape, form, or fashion. So let's get right into my top 10 excuses that come with white privilege, because white privilege really does have some of the best possible excuses that can be used for almost any situation. Number one, those who benefit from white privilege love to say things like, that was decades ago, or that was a long time ago. But you still did it and you got away with it. That's white privilege. Now, if you did it and you lost something of it, then your privilege didn't kick in. But if you did something decades ago or a long time ago, but you got away with it, I don't care why you got away with it, you benefited from white privilege. Number two, I was on Ambien or some other form of medication. White privilege affords you the ability to use that as an excuse. Black folks can't be like, well, I was high. I was on Ambien. They will lose their jobs, their children, their livelihood, get arrested, and have to go through the entire judicial process because they were Black. But white privilege affords white people the ability to use, I was on Ambien or some other form of medication, as an excuse. And they get to go on about their lives for the most part. They may have some ramifications when Black folks are in charge. But for the most part, that's an excuse that only works with white privilege. I'm the president. That's our third one. Y'all know Trump uses this every single time he does anything. That's his go-to. Being in power and using that as an excuse for your wrongdoing is white privilege. Because if Black people do it, we don't get to stay in power. There's a lot of things that white people do in positions of power. They get away with it for a long period of time. They never get called out on it. And when they do, they still get to have the seat of power until they decide to give it up, or the board of directors pushes them to give it up. Black folks have to step down publicly, write statements about them stepping down. And then there are instances where Black people have stepped down because of accusations when they sit in positions of power and they're innocent. And they don't get to just come right back. But white people do. The number four white privilege excuse. I'm a cop. We have seen an incredible increase in police brutality against Black people in particular, but now they're beating white women on beaches. And I kind of suspect that they did not know she was white because there were Black people in her immediate proximity. And so they probably thought she was just light skinned, which, there's a lot of us Black people who can still pass to this day. Y'all assume that, we're mixed or that we are specifically half white, or y'all forget that we come in like a rainbow. Like black people are the rainbow in the world because we literally, African American people specifically, come in so many different skin tones that sometimes for y'all white folks, y'all can't tell when we're black. So I still have no knowledge as to whether that young woman on the beach was white or whether she was light skinned. It doesn't really matter. Cops use the excuse when they are white that they are a cop. Therefore, they feel like they should be able to get away with any and everything that they do, including violating your civil liberties. And they're only getting away with it due to the fact that as black people, too many of us don't know that the laws that have been written are actually laws that we can take advantage of as well. There's no law that says that the police can beat your ass while they arrest you. You're unarmed. They don't have probable cause, which y'all need to look that up because too many of y'all are complacent about what probable cause is. Y'all think probable cause is every little thing, and it's not. They don't have an arrest warrant, and they're arresting people for things that they can just write a ticket for. Having an open canister of alcohol on a beach. I need y'all to show me where they say that that's okay for you to be arrested first, and where it says it's okay for the police to beat your ass while they arrest you on a beach with your baby there. And they literally were beating this girl in her head. 2 male white police officers. Again, I have no proof she was white, but I know there were black people in her proximity, and so maybe they thought she was one of us, so they felt like they could do whatever they wanted to do to us anyway. And the only reason they get away with it is because we're not filing lawsuits. We're not filing lawsuits. We need to start suing these cops so that they don't have the excuse under their white privilege to say, well, I'm a cop, so my wrongdoing should be ignored. Number 5, white privilege excuse for wrongdoing. I'm a man. White men get away with more because of their white privilege. White men get away with more because of their white privilege. And white privilege is also a form of oppression over white women. So part of the reason white men get away with stuff is because white women don't speak up against their own oppressor. White men have been oppressing white women all throughout history. They didn't just start with slaves. Their wives and their women were considered their property as well. So they still have that mindset towards everything that they do where women are concerned. Well, I'm a man, so I can do it. White men have killed white women all throughout history when white women have tried to stand up for themselves. Think about back to the suffragettes when they were attempting to get the right to vote. A lot of women were killed by white men during that time in our history. But white people don't want you to know that. They use their white privilege to hide the fact that they've always been oppressive. They've always hated women. They've always killed their own. Just as much, if not more, than they have killed black people. The difference is they kill us in droves. They kill their wives in their homes. That's the difference. But they get away with it because of white privilege. It's really just that simple. The 6th white privilege excuse for wrongdoing. I'm not a racist. You're probably wondering, well, how is that an excuse? Because it's the go-to the minute somebody does something racially motivated. And it only works for white people who exhibit white privilege. I'm not a racist. Every single time a white person does something that's racially motivated or based in their racial biases against black and brown people, the first thing they want to say is, I'm not a racist. Don't call me a racist. It hurts to be called a racist. But you did something that was racially motivated. You did. You called the police on us at a barbecue because we were black. You called the police on us while we were walking down the street with our baby in a stroller because we were black. You called the police on us because we were inspecting a house that we're in the process of purchasing because we were black. But you're not a racist. You called the police on us while we were sitting in Starbucks because we were black. You called the police on us at the Waffle House not once but twice because we were black. But you're not a racist, though. But your whole motivation for your actions towards us was because we are black and you are white. And you know that you have privilege. And if you call the police, you know that something bad is going to happen to us. That's white privilege. And your excuse is, I'm not a racist. Number 7. White privilege excuse for wrongdoing. Oh, that's fake news. White folks love using that. Anytime anyone white that is beloved by their white counterparts does anything wrong, the first thing they want to go to is that it's fake news. There has never been this much fake news in our history until now, thanks to Trump. But everybody's using it. Everybody's using it. Even if something is said incorrectly by a journalist, they immediately want to discount all of the factual basis and change the narrative to fit their mood and call it fake news. But even poorly investigated stories have some truth to them. But if you say it's fake news, then it's like, oh, it shouldn't have ever been said in the first place. Everything about it is wrong and untruthful. Don't believe any of it. Fake news. They love using that excuse for their white privilege. Number 8. Top white privilege excuses for wrongdoing. Number 8 is mental illness. Only white people are getting away with that. Let's just be quite honest. Every school shooting, oh, they're mentally ill, they're troubled. And these are their own children being shot up. But white privilege is affording them the ability to give an excuse to the shooter when they discover the shooter is white. Now, we've gotten accustomed to the pattern here. Because when the shooter is white, we don't get to see a picture for the first 6 hours. Because you guys are using your white privilege to put a narrative together about this white person being mentally ill. You're trying to find any and everything in their history at this point to excuse them with mental illness. You don't want to call them terrorists, even though that's exactly what they are. Because they have planned and plotted their attack against American people. But if they were black or brown or even slightly brown, they're a terrorist. We find a picture of them within 5 minutes, even if it's not the right picture. And we know their names. We know their entire history because they're a terrorist. But when they're white privilege kicks in, and it takes hours for us to know who this person is that just committed this atrocity against school children, against employees in workplaces. I'm just saying, we see you. And there's a big difference in how those situations are handled. On the rare occasion when it's a black or brown person, again, rare occasion, because we not known for just shooting up shit. That ain't what we do. That ain't how we roll. Immediately, the news has a picture, a narrative of how horrible and terrible that person is and how they've done all these other things to other people. But when the shooter is white, young and male and specifically, because it ain't like girls is out here just shooting up people. They're young white men with access to a whole lot of guns, thanks to Daddy and them and thanks to Walmart and them. And the laws that you put in place that allow them to purchase heavy artillery. I mean, I'm just saying. Number 9 of the top 10 of white privilege excuses for wrongdoing It's my First Amendment right. Y'all love that, don't you? White privilege affords you the right to say, it's my First Amendment right. I can say whatever I want to say, whenever I want to say it, however I want to say it, to whomever I want to say it to, because it's my First Amendment right. But when black people say something, y'all try to scream racism. When white people are funny. It's like when you feel like you can play the victim, then the person doesn't have the right to the First Amendment, right? They don't have the First Amendment right to say what they want to say when they disagree with you. And that's whether it's about your politics or your religion, or you're just being whoever you are and whatever you believe in. You have the First Amendment right, but it doesn't apply to black people. And one of the biggest examples that have been out recently is the difference between Tim Tebow and him taking a knee several times throughout a game in prayer, compared to Colin Kaepernick taking a knee during the anthem. So many white people are okay with Tim Tebow. That's his First Amendment right. He can pray throughout the entire football game if he wants to, and you can't do nothing. And he can be outspoken about not supporting the flag because of abortion. And he can say this and he can do that because he's a good Christian white man. That's white privilege. And Colin Kaepernick takes a knee because the same flag and the same anthem do not afford black people in this country any protection against police brutality. If you even listen to the words, well, some of y'all don't even know the words. Like Donald Trump does not know the words to the national anthem. There's video proof of it. He sings like 2-3 like parts of the lyrics that he knows verbatim, and then that's it. He doesn't even know the song. But you will stand up and fight for a piece of cloth and a song more than you will stand up and fight for the rights of human beings. You don't have a problem with somebody being very vocal about their opinions and beliefs in abortion, which, by the way, in case y'all notice, men can't give birth or get pregnant. So it's amazing to me how they always have issues with abortions, but they don't take care of the kids when the kids are born because they're not even their kids a lot of times. You know, I don't want women to be able to get abortions, but then the child comes into the world and they're like, I don't want the mother to get welfare. But you didn't want her to get an abortion. So how is the child going to be taken care of if the father is not in the picture? I'm just saying. But Colin Kaepernick takes the exact same physical stance. And the problem you have is that it's during the national anthem, which does not in any way have any law that says you have to stand up for it. It's ceremonious. There's no law that says that you have to stand for the flag and salute it or stand during the national anthem. There's no law. He's not breaking any laws by kneeling. None whatsoever. When he was sitting, y'all wasn't as mad. Now he kneeling and it's a problem, but it's the same exact physical representation that Tim Tebow repeats repeatedly throughout a football game. And y'all don't have no problem with that. That's white privilege. All day. And twice on Sunday. Simple. Simple. And the number 10 white privilege excuse for wrongdoing is, you're black, I'm not. Believe it or not, that's an excuse that people use when they are shrouded in white privilege. I can do it, but you can't. Because you're black, I'm not. That's white privilege all day and twice on Sunday. You can give the exact same scenarios and put a black person and a white person in the exact same situation. If the person that is white has any racial bias whatsoever, when it comes to them in that scenario of wrongdoing, they truly believe that they should be able to walk away from it because they're not black. And there are people in this world who literally know that if they do something, they're not going to get the same punishment or have the same repercussions or consequences afforded to them because they're not black. That is white privilege. Plain and simple. Plain and simple. That's just how I was feeling today. I wanted to do a little top 10 about white privilege. And I just want to thank real quick Amanda Seals. She has this really dope video of her speaking at an event. And one of the things that she said that makes so much sense in the scope of this particular podcast today is that there are white people and then there are people who happen to be white. That's very prolific, in my opinion, because it's true. All my life, I've lived around white people. I've never had white people call the police on me or my son. I'm fortunate enough to live in a neighborhood where for a number of years, there were white people as well as white police officers right in the neighborhood where I lived. And when you're their neighbors and your kids go to school together, walk to school together, play together, they don't have this sense of fear towards you. But when being in urban areas, but you don't live, commune, shop in those areas, and your only job is coming in, getting your paycheck and leaving, that affords a space in your mental environment where racism and white supremacy can grow and become a part of you. Because you don't see black people or brown people or Muslim people enough to know that they're people just like you are. There is something very good about not having segregation among our own neighborhoods and in our communities. Almost every urban area around the city has at some point or another experienced what they call white flight, where white people lived in the neighborhood, and as black people became free and moved to the north and moved into those neighborhoods, white people left and built the suburbs. That's what white flight was all about. And gentrification has its good points, and it definitely has its bad points, because a lot of the bad points are white people that have come from the suburbs, have never had any experience that was positive with black people, brown people, Muslim people. And so they come into urban areas with those racial biases, those fears of black people. And all of a sudden, I got to call the police because this black man is walking down the street with a grocery bag. That's the downside to gentrification. The idea that the black people that were already living here are problematic. When it's oftentimes the black people wanted a lot of the improvements that you're getting. And so they stand because they've been waiting on it in the first place. They ain't leaving. This their house. It's just like when white people move out into suburban areas and start building communities and they run off the animals. Some of those animals stay because that's their home. It's the same thing. You cannot expect for all black people to just run up out of the neighborhood that they've already been occupying just because you showed up. That's not how that works. And the idea that that's how it works is based in racism. The good side to gentrification is that white people being around more people who are black, brown, and Muslim, and African and Chinese, Korean, and so on and so forth. If you live in an area like Detroit, you're going to run into all types of people from all different places all over the world. Puerto Ricans, Africans, Nigeria, we got everything. Okay. So if you come into the urban area with racial biases and have been used to separatism and segregation, you're going to feel like, oh, I need to protect myself and these people shouldn't be here because I'm here now. But if you don't have those racial biases, if you live and work around people who don't look like you, who don't have the same religious experience as you, the same historical experience as you, but you are aware of that within yourself and you don't fear people for being different from you, that's when it becomes a good thing, because people can coexist. And people like that, white people in particular, those are the ones who call out the barbecue Beckys. Those are the ones that call out racism when they see it. Those are the cops that tell people, don't call the police on this black person for this person coming here to do their job, or I'll arrest you. Those are the white people who don't intentionally use white privilege to oppress or harm others. And those people do exist. And we do need them to stand up when they see something. And we appreciate when you stand up and say something. We appreciate you pulling out your cell phones and putting these racist white people on blast. Because if you don't, they'll continue to do what they're doing to black, brown people any and everywhere they go. And that's how racism spreads. And that's how it breeds. And that's how it is allowed to be powerful. So if you don't have a problem with black folks, 911 calls shouldn't be stupid. And I've seen 911 operators speak about their experiences, and they can tell the difference between a white person calling them over some little petty reason versus them being an actual concerned citizen. See, because if you're a concerned citizen, you hear a noise at your neighbor's house and you know that your neighbors are black, you gonna call the police because you know your neighbors are out of town. That's different. You think somebody's breaking in their house. Your neighbors happen to be black. You have no intention of your neighbors being shot because to your knowledge, they're out of town. Somebody's breaking in their house. You know your neighbors are black. But when you see that you have black neighbors and all of a sudden you're so shook that you got to call the cops on them, you're racist. Because all of a sudden, where these black people come from? Oh, my God. You're a racist. And you call the police because you know that they'll come and probably shoot this black person just because of what you said. We cannot revert back into the 1950s, 1940s America. We cannot. We can't even go back to the 1960s America. But that's what white folks are trying to do. And they're trying to use these 10 excuses for it. And it's not acceptable. We have lost too many of our civil rights leaders in the fight to get us this far. And we got way too much work to do going forward for our children and our next generations to allow for white supremacy to raise its ugly head again here in the United States. We need to vote for more diversity in a lot of areas because there's too many white men sitting in positions of power making decisions for the rest of us that hurt us. And I say us because I look at things the way Colin Kaepernick did. He took a huge sacrifice on behalf of our entire group of people. That's us. See, a lot of people can stand up for themselves, or they can even cry and complain and say, well, no policy has particularly hurt me from this administration. So because it doesn't specifically harm me, then it's okay. That's bullshit. And that's the bullshit that allows white privilege and white supremacy to rule, because it didn't affect you directly. So it's no big deal. Thinking like that is a problem, particularly for people of color. Because if we don't fight for each other, when it does directly affect us, we won't have no allies. You may not agree with some of the things going on, but if you sit in a place where you say, well, it doesn't directly affect me, when it does affect you, we won't have any allies. Think about immigration for just 2 seconds. A lot of the migrant workers that come into this country, they pay taxes. They work in our food and agricultural industries. They're the cooks in the restaurants a lot of times. Even in black-owned establishments, there's a lot of times there are undocumented workers in the kitchen, undocumented workers on the wait staff, undocumented workers as busboys, cleaning up and such, because they need jobs. And some people, they like, look, I hire you because you're qualified, not because you don't look like me. And if this administration is allowed to continue to do what they're doing as far as immigration and talking about building this old monument wall to Trump and all this other bullshit, it will desperately and detrimentally harm our food and agricultural base in a lot of our urban cities. I promise you, because they grow it, they pick it, they cook it. That's just the reality. And I ain't going back to picking cotton or strawberries or oranges or none of that if it ain't out my own garden. I'm going to keep it real with you. I don't farm. That ain't what she do. But I eat. And I like to know where my food is coming from. And I like to know that the employees that are there are not being mistreated. I like to know that the farmers and the migrant workers are not being harmed, because a lot of them are young women. A lot of them are young women. And I don't want their rights trampled on. I don't want these young men and these young women being separated from their families, because that's what they did to us in slavery. This ain't no new shit, y'all. Read a real history book and not this watered down bullshit that they telling kids to read now. So what happens in immigration does impact me personally. It does. Because I can see the ramifications of it to our food and agricultural industries. A lot of things are black owned too. We talk about supporting black businesses, but black owned businesses are getting their food from migrant workers and migrant farmers. Duh. Where you gonna get your cabbage from, Maurice? Where you gonna get your cabbage from? Where you gonna get it from? Where you gonna get your oranges from? Where you gonna get your lettuce from? What? Think about it. It's so much bigger than you personally. There is a cause and effect stream from beginning to end that can impact our economy a great deal, particularly in the black community, if we don't stand up. And there's a lot of fights to fight. Some people only want to fight one fight at a time. Guess what? Being human means you better learn how to multitask, because there's a whole lot of issues. Everybody can't take on all the issues at one time, and that's understandable. Take on one that matters to you, but at the same token, don't down that brother or sister who's taking on a different issue, because all the issues matter. Because all black lives matter. So you can't say we can only talk about police brutality in this moment, and we can't talk about immigration and its effects long term on the black populace. We have to do both. We can't cry 1 second and say, well, we should only be talking about women's rights. No, because women's rights is all important, all at the same time. And soldiers should stand in the war that they can fight. But it's multiple wars going on at the same time. There's a war on women. There's a war on immigration. There's a war on people of color. And they're all taking place at the same time. So we can't address one issue and ignore the others. Lend your support where you can. But don't tell other brothers and sisters what fight to fight, because they're fighting the fight that they're good at. You need to find the one that you're good at and fight it too. That's it. Dig this here. I'll be back.